Hello, welcome to another episode of the Arborist Growth Partners with me, Graeme Knight. And I'm super excited today to have Stella Dee with me, who's an extremely experienced arborist, actually, a PhD candidate in arboriculture in the University of Massachusetts, and also owner-operator of Access Arboriculture as well. How are you doing, Stella?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Yeah. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm super excited to have you on here. We were just talking actually about the little video you sent where
Mhm.
you had the LLC out of a car and you were going around showing us what was in the car for your business. And I was just laughing because it looks exactly like my car, which is fantastic.
Totally.
So I totally related to you straight away. For sure. So before we move on, I got to ask you the question that I ask everybody because everybody has a unique perspective on this, and that question is, in your opinion, what separates the tree service companies that thrive from those that just survive? And do you have one or two points, things that you've experienced that could be useful to folks out there?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this. This is a really good question. And I think the answer is it's going to sound a little corny, definitely, but the ones that thrive, I think, are the ones that really love people because everybody in this industry at every level loves the plants, and it's in many ways easier to love the plants because they don't express their opinions to you quite as much. But I think the ones that thrive love the people because ultimately the work that we do is about figuring out these compromises between people and plants. It's a lot of public relations, especially once you enter in a more sales, once you're selling work or once you're working, you're the kind of last point of accountability for clients as an operator, as an owner, as a sales representative. And then also once you're either training people as a crew leader, once you're managing people as employees or as subcontractors, it just becomes very, very, very
Mm,
much about the people, too.
mm,
And I think that's where some people who have a lot of passion for the trees but don't like the people stuff as much can really struggle sometimes, and I think it's loving people and then it's also having a sense of humor because in this industry, and this is also at
mm,
every level, getting yelled at is kind of a when, not an if. Like you are going to get yelled at, it's going to happen. You can talk about maybe you deserved it, maybe you didn't deserve it, maybe
right.
there's different perspectives on whether or not you deserved it, but it will happen. It will probably happen multiple
Mm,
times.
mm.
And if you can kind of handle that with grace, with apologies if necessary and warranted, or sometimes even if not necessary and not warranted, and a sense of humor, that's huge.
So don't yell back.
Yeah, no, not yelling back, de-escalating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. We've had a few people on the podcast that said the same thing that it's kind of a customer service and people, you're in the business of people.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I've known some arborists who have not been people at all. And even if they pick up the phone manner is so bad that it can potentially put clients off as well to go somewhere else.
Totally. And even on a crew, because even if with a larger company, if you're working three to a truck all day in all weather in all moods, that
Mm,
interaction with your crew and with each other is everything.
it's team sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. Never a perspective I've thought about, but I guess that's true. And you're working in an environment which is dangerous as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what can be very neat about it is you are really trusting each other with your lives. So
Mm,
even if you don't really get along, just having respect and trust in each other. Sometimes people who you don't even maybe get along with totally is really important
yeah,
and
I
kind
love.
of a neat part of the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So Stella, tell us about yourself. who you are, what you've done, because you've done a lot.
Yeah. So actually, I would say that in many ways, it sounds like you're maybe a rock climber.
Yes.
And that is in my past and to some degree present as well. So my dad was a high school English teacher, but also until he retired, but also directed an outdoor education program at a small private high school in St. Louis, Missouri, with a very established outdoor program, an outdoor education program. And the school has access to land in the Ozarks that my dad was partially responsible for managing. So I grew up dragging brush for him. We would thin these cedars out there. He would run the chainsaw. We would drag it all into a pile and then burn it. He would lead rock climbing trips, caving trips, canoeing, whitewater paddling. My background is in whitewater paddling. And then he actually did some recreational tree climbing with his students after I graduated, where he would run what's called the canopy camp out, where he would send them up a tree for the night with the help of a friend and business owner in St. Louis, Missouri, called Vertical Voyages, John Richards. He would send the students up and they would sleep in hammocks in this tree on school grounds for the night.
Love it.
So grew up very outdoors. My dad would do things like walking inside with a drip torch and be like, we're going to do a controlled burn, And then I always kind of had done landscaping and gardening and things like that as side work in high school, college. Thought I wanted to be a vegetable farmer for a while. And then I realized that vegetables are very, very stressful. And I mean, I have so much respect for people who do more herbaceous and more annual things, because that lifestyle is very, very, very demanding. And that's a stressful industry. So I realized that vegetables were too stressful for me.
I used to think that when I was a kid as well.
Yeah.
Mostly when I was eating them.
Yeah. And then, with some twists and turns, some studying archaeology, like archaeobotany and the history of human interaction with plants, I ended up doing a master's of forestry at Michigan Tech and realizing that, trees is where I want to be. Started climbing trees with Davy Tree, Hartney Graymont in eastern Massachusetts. And that was about a little over 10 years ago. And I was like, this is it. This is my vocation. This is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life.
Cool.
Yeah. But recently this past winter, I got back into rock climbing a little bit with my daughter. We started going to the rock gym, and it's really fun. And after 10 years in tree work, I am like, is this going to hold me? Because the harnesses compared to saddles are nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get that comment a lot. You guys are crazy. You're using all this all light equipment.
Totally. I have to trust somebody else to belay me. I can't run my own system. It's it's an intense feeling after being in the trees for so long.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's I guess it's what you're used to, right?
Totally.
And the systems you trust and the systems that you're used to, and then transitioning to something completely different. Can be intimidating, I think. That's cool. And so obviously you're academically inclined as well.
Yeah. I love school, I'm a huge nerd. I would say I ended up back in a PhD program as almost more of a professional choice in many ways. That was due to, so when I was pregnant with my eldest, I was working for the Davy Resource Group doing inventory arboriculture. And then I did some more commercial work, and then it was trying to figure out how to be in the industry and also parent the way I wanted to parent, also in the middle of a pandemic. So there was a lot going on. And realized that Dr. Brian Kane, who's my current advisor, he had hired me shortly after we moved out to Western Massachusetts. And I realized that he was wonderful and doing very interesting work. And so I approached him about the possibility of a PhD, and it was one of those things where initially it was kind of a professional decision, like this was a good way to remain in the industry, keep climbing, like climbing for research, keep doing some side work on the side, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, and in kind of a flexible way that worked for our family. And so then I had a second child over the course of my program, and I climbed throughout that entire pregnancy, which I'm also happy to talk about. Probably not for the first time pregnant people.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we just before the recording, we talked particularly about how you can be in the industry with kids. So
Yeah.
maybe we could dig into that a little bit now.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah. So I think how to be in the industry with kids. I think there's all different paths, and there's a lot. Everybody who's in the industry with kids who carried those children, who was the gestational parent, has a slightly different story. I think for me, for my second pregnancy, I knew that, thankfully it was a pretty, as far as the experience of pregnancy goes, for me, both times was fairly straightforward medically. So caveat, I'm not a doctor, and this is not going to apply to anybody whose experience was less than straightforward. So I'm only speaking for me.
We're just talking here.
Personally. Yeah. But for me, I had realized that I wasn't concerned for myself as a climber in the low volume side work I was doing and the research climbing. I wasn't so concerned about the fall risk, actually. I was more concerned about certain changes that happen to loosen your joints, and concerns about joint stress, and then concerns about noise and fumes. So my friend who typically works as a subcontractor for me on tree jobs, when we had to rent a chipper, for example, he would do all the chipping while I was pregnant, and I would run only electric saws, which I try to do anyway, for environmental reasons. And then I had switched to a full body like Petzl harness, which isn't set up for tree work. It was a little tricky with the lanyard and stuff because it was only a chest attachment. There were no side attachment points. Again, not Z133 approved. So, but that's just what I did. And that's how I did that. Yeah. And then research has turned out to be really, really fun and interesting and fulfilling. And I hope to keep doing that. I love everything I'm doing right now. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's interesting digging into the working with kids or the working while you're pregnant. Obviously you can do that. You can still do it for as long as you feel is good. You don't have to quit your day job necessarily. Obviously seek out advice from your doctor and a professional, but it's interesting that we spoke a little bit about that. What about sort of after kids and having a family and still staying in the industry? Is that challenging?
So yes and no. Is it, for me right now, is it more challenging than other parents in other industries? Probably not. Would it be if I were in an environment like I had been working in prior to having kids, where there's that expectation that you can work a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. day? Definitely, and I hope, one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to be talking to you is because a lot of what I'm doing now kind of out in the world of arboriculture is presenting research and stuff and not so much talking about this. But I hope to communicate to people that, there's real value in those of us who have these kinds of life experiences, and we bring a lot to the table, I hope.
Absolutely.
And it's worth kind of working with us to figure out schedules and arrangements that work, even for those companies where the expectation is you work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I hope
Yeah.
those companies moving forward, perhaps like keep an open mind. And if people for various reasons can't do that, kind of think about how to work with them in ways that aren't like, oh, I'm creating this special little exception for you, but no, like you're a important member of the team. Like I value the things you're doing when you're not at work.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hope to support you in being a member of our team.
Policies of companies going forward, like it almost seems to me like something like the arboriculture industry could be almost, I don't want to say this, but kind of stuck in the past with the way that it does things. But we've had such a shift since the pandemic in, and I've worked traditionally in offices, and I've seen such a huge shift in the way that not only we work, but the way that people's lives and what they do day to day is respected more. What they have to do outside of the office, be it be it working from home or be it going into the office a couple of times. Is that something that's happened in your industry, do you think, or is it still a little bit old school?
It's hard to say because the industry is so sprawling and
Mm,
different companies work under such different legal and
right,
interpersonal landscapes, right? So, for example, for a large company, they're legally mandated to work with people on some of this stuff,
right.
right? And so, whereas a small company, at least in the US, is under a small business exemption, where they may not be legally obligated to work with somebody who comes to them and is like, I need to make some different kinds of arrangements in order to work for you. And so yeah, I think it's true that arboriculture, and I think there's good reasons for that, because if you're on a job, it can be tricky to leave, or yeah, but I guess the majority of the industry, I would say, is still these smaller companies, and that was one of the things that I think was very valuable in running an official LLC of my own,
Mm,
because I was able to pull that off. I was able to, my goal was never to do more than high volume side work, but I also never wanted to spend money to make money. We were always in the
right.
green. We were always paying
Right.
subcontractors more than the big companies. I was able to cover all of my costs, things like that, while working on a schedule that worked for my
Mm,
family and had somebody else. One of my friends who he and I worked together for a long, long time. He is also a shepherd, so we were both doing a lot of and silvopastoralist. Yeah, so also a lot of things going on in his life. He had sheep and
that's
chickens and things
interesting.
things to look after, and
Mm,
so we were able to do it. And I hope that experience can help me communicate to some small
mm.
business owners out there who may think that it's kind of impossible to really be employee centered or subcontractor centered in that way, that it's possible to work with people
Yeah.
and build something profitable that's also
Yeah.
fair and equitable. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if you're looking after the people you have,
Yeah,
they're going to stay with you long term.
totally.
Simple as that. But as a small company, and especially if you're the boss and the owner and you have all that stress, you're invested in it so much. And maybe you work 24/7, but you can't necessarily expect your employees to do the same as you, right?
Right.
That's tough. So what about your LLC? You sent me a video, which is really cool. How to run an LLC out of your car, which I absolutely love that because your car looks like my car, albeit my climbing gear is a little smaller. Um, Tell me a little bit about your LLC and the side work and what you were doing and how you were doing it. And why would
Yeah.
anybody else want to do something similar?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this at the beginning when I thought maybe you were recording, but you weren't recording. So I'll
No.
probably repeat myself. Yeah, yeah. So many of us, I think, in this industry, pretty
Mm.
much everybody, I pretty much don't know anybody who's an arborist who doesn't do side work.
Right.
And I was saying to you that there's a fun word that we use in Massachusetts, which perhaps is regional. Here we call it buzzies, like, which is short for buzzard work, where you're flying around looking for stuff. If you know how to do tree work and word gets out, then people come banging down your door asking for tree work, basically. And you have to decide whether to say yes or no, and whether you're going to do it over the table or under the table. And I think most people typically say yes to at least some jobs and typically do it under the table. And that's what I had done for the first maybe 5 years of my life in arboriculture. And then during the pandemic, during a period of time when I was kind of between things, between commercial work and starting as a PhD student and research assistant, which is kind of my main source of benefits and income. This was always a supplementary thing. I had decided to transition it to an LLC because I think having kids was definitely a big part of that, kind of understanding more the importance of a paper record of employment and these things that can come between us and full-time employment. Because prior to having kids, it was like, I am currently able-bodied. I know how to use computers. Like, I didn't really see myself not being able or willing to find kind of a traditional job. And then as a combination of, again, the pandemic and having kids, it became clear to me that, there was like value in being able to really be on my own and have that kind of autonomy, and also have that kind of paper trail of what I was doing. And I had, again, these role models. So Jen Cattell at Radiant Leaf, who had this side business that became her full business, Joanna O'Boyle, Ursa Minor in Wisconsin, who had a side business that was insured, that became her full business. Also, I'm very legally risk averse and aware that it's a very legally risky industry. And so as I was receiving requests from work from people I knew less and less well, it started to be like, well, I think I want a little bit more of a layer here of that kind of insurance LLC stuff. Because it's one thing if you're only doing work for your neighbor, or you're somebody you know very, very well, versus people you know less well. So I did all the paperwork to become a LLC and become insured, which is not super easy to find insurance when you don't have a paper trail, because it's kind of one of these, it's actually one of these things where I would recommend, like, if you ever think you might want to be on your own, I still think there's a lot of value in doing it that more official way, because if you have a track record, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but maybe some listeners don't, where if you have kind of a track record of operating safely as an LLC, then it's much easier to find insurance, because people don't really want to insure arborists. They especially don't really want to insure part-time arborists, was my experience.
Right. And so are you saying that before the LLC you were basically, and I don't know if this is what it's like, but I see these Facebook ads all the time where somebody's asking for a climber, and somebody raises their hands and says, "Yeah, I can come and help you," and I'm like, is that an individual doing the under the table money transfer here, legitimate things going on here? And I always wondered to myself whether, particularly if you're not an LLC, how things like insurance and liability and other claims, and possibly even going to court over an incident, is affected when you're just yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of those questions I don't have the answer to. I do know there's a full spectrum of people working a full spectrum of situations, sometimes all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of the things about how our industry operates. I was never answering internet ads. It's always been very word of mouth,
Right.
where somebody being like, "Oh, my mom, who's in
Mm.
her 80s, needs help with something," and then you're up a tree and the neighbor sees you and is like, "Oh, hey, next weekend will you come do this for me?" That
But
kind of
even
thing.
that potentially, if you're not an LLC, potentially has liability
Oh,
essentially as
definitely.
well.
Yeah,
Even if
definitely.
you're a friend.
Yeah, totally. Totally. But a lot of us are just like, oh, that's just like a risk we're willing to
Sure,
live with, you
sure.
know. Um, but definitely,
Mm.
yeah. Uh, and it was a fun, helpful workshop for experimenting with different
Mm.
practices, such as, for example, climbing while pregnant, such as operating fully
Right,
electrically
right.
or close to fully electrically, having a little bit of a budget for the fancy new gear, um, that
Mm.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. I guess if you had a vision of starting your own company, you're gonna have to go the LLC way anyway. Eventually, you're gonna try to get more business. You got the insurance. You're gonna get some people to work for you. It's a natural way. But I guess what you're saying is if you're doing little side jobs here and there, you're assessing the risk, you're assessing the liability, and it's word of mouth. I mean, we're not offering legal advice here, obviously, but
Right.
that is what people do in the industry, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the industry need to make these choices, and I think whether to accept side work, whether to do it officially, whether to do it unofficially, whether to, once they're doing it officially, with an LLC,
Mm.
whether to try to grow or whether to be like, this is enough, this is
Right,
meeting my need. And then I think it really becomes about learning how to say no to work very quickly, because if you're a reputable operator, then at least where we are, like at least where I am, there's lots and lots of trees. Everybody needs tree work. Everybody needs shrub work. So people literally are just constantly trying to get their tree work done. And so learning how and when and how much to say no to almost becomes
right,
more important than learning how
right,
and when and what to say yes to. And I would imagine that's true of larger companies as well, but it's super
right.
true when you're a small company with limited capacity. You really want to make the jobs you do like a good fit. And that's something
Mm.
I learned pretty quickly. Like an example is I really quickly learned I'm not pruning shrubs. I actually love pruning shrubs. I
Right.
love fine pruning shrubs. I think it's very artistic, very fun. But around here, what people are willing to pay for shrub pruning
Mm.
was not going to work for me. Like it takes a lot of time to prune a shrub well.
You were paying them,
Yeah, yeah. I,
basically.
I, I really quickly had to stop taking on
Right,
shrub clients,
right.
and I had some great shrub clients. There's another issue with shrub clients. Thankfully, none of these were my shrub clients as a LLC, but in my past working for commercial companies, some people who want their shrubs pruned well are often perfectionists, and that comes with its
Ah,
own set of
yeah,
complications. So I really quickly had to say, I'm a climber. I'm
right.
not I'm not pruning any shrubs. That kind of thing. Yeah,
Interesting, because now we're going back to a conversation that we always have, which is know your costs, know how
totally.
much know how much that job is bringing in. Don't undercut just to get the work, because you may end up effectively paying the client. And I suspect that's particularly important if you're doing side work, actually. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and also don't do everything. Maybe niche down a little bit with what you do. what was it? I was listening to a book recently, and the guy was talking about a contractor who was cleaning leaves from his gutters, and then he saw a loose roof tile. So now he had a roof tile repairing service, and then he saw something else, and he had that other service, and he went to the hardware store and bought all of this equipment, came back, fixed everything, and still charged the same amount of money. But this is great because now I have lots of different services I can offer. But of course, he wasn't making any money from them because he was doing too much, not charging enough, had all the expensive equipment. So I guess that's pretty important as well, particularly as a person doing side business. Don't stretch yourself too thin.
No, I think you need to be really clear on what you're good at, what makes sense financially, what the people in your area are really looking for. Back to the shrubs, there's just less of a market, I would say, here for formal pruning than there is in, say, the Boston area. And just thinking about that, I think another advantage, honestly, to selling your own work for those of us who spend a lot of time working for larger companies is, I do think, as far as transferable skills, that knowing, and this is something that has really served me in my life as a PhD student too, is knowing how long it takes yourself to do things. Like coming up with an estimate that's accurate is just a very valuable life skill.
I know a lot of people that do small jobs here and there, and I know a lot of people who want to grow a bigger company. And there's a stuck there because we have the same problem actually with what we do as well. We want to get more clients, and then we want to bring people in to help us, but we haven't quite got enough clients to get those additional people in. Do you invest your own money? Do you stay in your day job? It's tricky. It's a tricky balancing act, and also predicting where you want to go with your business as well. And in fact, what we were just talking about when you were talking about managing your time and knowing how long you take to do things, if you're sitting down at your desk and you're writing all of this down, you're almost thinking like an LLC anyway.
Totally, yeah.
Right? So there seems to be this natural, I don't know, if you sit down and you're planning, you're almost going that way. So there's a natural transition to doing things the right way, just so you can do a better job almost.
Yeah, and I think knowing also kind of what you were saying is some people get into like business and they just want to grow, right? And some people get in and they have a vision and they want to stay the same.
Yeah.
But what I've kind of wanted to do, and I think been successful at doing, is kind of expanding and contracting my operation to fit the time that I want it to take, the time that I have.
Yeah. So is it more about freedom and managing your own time than it is about money?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's about many things, and it's about like balancing all of those things, So another thing it's about is kind of just is how it plays into my role as a researcher, because I feel very strongly that I want my research to be applied. And so for it to apply, I need a very clear sense of what's happening on the ground, And so just hearing what people's concerns are, what they've been hearing from, for example, their insurance agents or like their home insurance, or hearing what things have happened. For example, I had a client who we took off a branch over her roof that was initially kind of about safety. It was an extending oak branch over her roof, and she was concerned about safety, but there were also solar panels there. And what those clients found is that our pruning actually increased their solar production. So that just taking off this branch that to an arborist would look like a pretty small oak branch as part of a big oak tree increased their solar production to the point where they were no longer paying for electricity at all. So then I hear a story like that, and as a researcher, I'm like, wow, because so frequently these solar companies are like, well, why don't we just like cut down all of the branches, cut down all the trees, so on and so forth. That's what's necessary for these solar panels. But now I'm trying to think of a way where I could do work in the future to look at how pruning affects solar output. That's and that's really something niche. That came very niche, you said?
It's very niche, but it sounds very important.
Totally, because solar is going in all over the country. Energy prices are only seem to be going up. And so knowing what pruning does to that solar output would be a really, really helpful thing to know. And that's something that I would never have thought that little pruning could have that kind of an impact. Without having a foot in the sidewalk.
And you can still keep the tree as well.
Right. You can retain the tree, all of its benefits.
So take us a little bit into your research, why you became a PhD candidate. You said you're a nerd.
Yeah, definitely.
I like nerds. I'm a nerd too. What is it? What's your speciality? What do you bring into the world?
Yeah, so my dissertation looks at the biomechanical, physiological, and ecological effects of different arboricultural interventions. So bracing, cabling, and pruning specifically. Okay. So the first chapter of my dissertation in a paper that I already published was looking at how bracing and cabling affect the physical properties of trees, dynamic and static sway response. And then I did work looking at reduction versus removal of pruning of varying severities and how that influences those biomechanical properties, epicormic regrowth, like shoots, and wound occlusion, so wound healing, and then the insect community associated with trees. And then I also did a study looking at how response to pruning varies by growing zone. So pruned a bunch of honey locusts in New Jersey, here in Massachusetts, and then Vermont, and looked at some of those same response variables. And moving forward, hope to continue looking at these very applied research topics in arboriculture.
Is that something? I mean, to me, that sounds like something that could really enhance understanding of arboriculture practices. Like you said, businesses like solar companies who would hack down the tree, but instead, you have this research that nobody's done before saying, why do you prune in this way? That could be huge for business as well as trees in general.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as a researcher, and going back to that, how that interplay with side work, learning how to sell and discuss uncertainty with clients is a really interesting thing to do and can be pretty complicated because a lot of tree companies come in with a lot of expert energy, like I'm the arborist, I know about trees, I know how this tree is going to behave. And often that's what clients want. Clients really want somebody who's going to guide them. And that's not my style. And it's not my style as an arborist, and it's not how I perceive what we know as a researcher. Frankly, we don't know that much about trees. There are some things we know, but I always say to people, that tree could fall tomorrow and it could fall in never, it could never fall. So, and we in most cases, we don't have enough information to tell you what it's going to do, and kind of working with people to say that in a reassuring way and not a scary way, and then working with them how to balance their goals with what we know and what we don't know
Right.
is something I enjoy. It's also, oh, this is, I think, what I was going to say that's very practical for people.
Mm.
There's always this question of, do you charge for the initial consultation?
Mm-hmm.
I would never ever, as a small volume side work operator, charge for the initial consultation. I think it's super important, going back to that saying yes or no, for me to be able to say this isn't a good match, for them to be able to say this isn't a good match, and also to give them a truly unbiased opinion of the situation, as well as a referral if I believe it's warranted. You know, like if something's like, if I walk in there and it's definitely going to be more cost effective and time efficient to do it with a machine, I will definitely every time refer them to a more mechanized operator. Now, I will say, and this is also, I think, very practical for a lot of people, that that's not always what they want. Even when I upfront say this estimate will be more money and more time than a machine, most likely, some people will say, we want a person. You know, I think, like,
Interesting.
in this era, there is a lot of AI, there's a lot of things that feel less personal, and again, coming back to this idea that it's a people business, one of the most amazing mentors and tree care company owners I've ever worked with and for, he would come home and he would get on the phone in a lawn chair in his backyard and talk to clients for just half an hour, 45 minutes, just about their lives.
Wow.
And
love it.
Yeah, a lot of people are looking for that. A lot of people are looking for a person. So I think honesty is important, but some people really just want a person climbing their trees and thinking about their trees.
I hate to say it, but if you take the time to talk to your clients and get to know them, you're going to have clients for a long time.
Totally, which gets back to saying no and being able to say no, which is a really, really important skill.
Yeah.
Really important skill. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was curious about what you just said, particularly about a tree potentially breaking now or potentially breaking in the future, and not knowing when the client has a concern. That's really interesting, because on the one hand, I say to myself, you're a great human being. And on the other hand, I say, you're not a very good salesperson. Right? But I guess in an arborist, what you're trying to do is really figure out the right solution for that client, for that tree. And if it means not doing any work, so be it. They may go to somebody else, but
totally. And but again, that's one of the luxuries and one of the great parts about having a lot of work opportunities. Is you gain a lot of credibility, you gain a lot of legal protection, again, which can be very important. And around here, there truly is no deficit of tree work. And just having confidence that the right work will be there. And that same person sometimes will be like, oh, but then let's just go take a look at this tree. And then there's, a giant issue.
Right. Not what I was originally going to talk to you about. But
that happens
that's interesting.
Quite frequently.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess customers don't know what they don't know. Simple as that. And once you're actually there with them, you can see other things happening as well. I know somebody who refused to do a tree job for a potential client, because it was unwarranted, it wasn't needed. And they ended up getting the worst Google review from this guy ever. I wouldn't do what I want, wouldn't do what I wanted them to do, wouldn't listen, wouldn't hack down that tree because it was in the way of my Audi or whatever. And it was just the wrong thing to do. So I guess potentially there's, a chance of making a bad name for yourself as well.
Oh, totally. And that's why I make no claim to be a large time operator or want to be one.
Yeah.
I
It's
I
interesting.
totally I totally think that larger operators couldn't and shouldn't have the same approach.
Sure. Sure.
I will say to large time operators listening to this who think, oh, this is totally irrelevant to me. I think the challenge for those people is to make your companies more desirable than doing what I'm doing,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
everybody would rather have, most people, including employees, would rather be told what to do and have
Mm.
very stable schedule, good benefits, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if if companies had been a certain kind of way, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I think those people maybe think about how you can make your companies
Yeah.
more desirable,
Yeah, absolutely.
than the life of a small time operator. Because the
Yes.
reality of this work is that people, like I've said before, people are constantly
Mm.
weighing their options, because in a lot of places there is so much work
Mm.
that and if you do have people who stick around for a long time, that says a lot about you as a
It
company.
really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't tell you how many companies I've been fired from. That's why I do what I do now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny actually. I was speaking to somebody last week who we were talking about actually companies like us, marketing companies who just want to grow, 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 grow. And his opinion was it's really about the life I want to lead, and it's about
Mm,
making enough income that I can have the freedom that I want, and I can be okay, and I can be okay for the future, but I don't necessarily need to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's really interesting. A company, an LLC, you're doing a side work. If you're happy and you're making enough money, why grow it,
exactly. That's
right?
my attitude. It's not for
Yeah,
everybody, but
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
So that's really cool. We're coming up to the top of the hour now, so I'm going to ask you that other famous question that I've started to ask people is if you have any books you recommend that people should read, be it on business, um, be it on trees, anything good that you've read lately.
Well, so this lines up really well with what you were saying before, which is I read a very, very fun book called "To Rob a Bank is an Honor," which is a
I've got to read that.
autobiography of a man named Lucio Urtubia, who is a Basque bricklayer.
Huh.
And I think the takeaway from this book, which might seem to be not at all about arboriculture, for the arboriculture industry,
Mm,
is really this idea of in the trades, which tree work is I would say a trade.
mm,
One of the amazing things is we do have so much freedom and so much autonomy to kind of chart our own paths and think about things and talk to people in ways that can be unique in other fields.
mm.
So that was a great book. It surprisingly had some things to say about tree work, I think.
It's got a great title.
Yeah, there's some good quotes. He's quite a guy, quite a guy. Yeah. Definitely some things that were problematic about him too, as we say, but it was a fun
Okay.
read. Yeah.
I might have to look at that. Cool. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you so
No.
much for chatting. Feel free to be in touch.
So, where can people find you, Stella, if they want to get in contact? Because you're obviously, to me, you're an inspirational person. So
Oh, that's so kind.
I know we can find you on LinkedIn for sure.
LinkedIn, yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. People
Okay.
can email me at sdee@umass.edu. I have actually put the side business on hopefully permanent hiatus, although as we've talked about, everything's always totally unpredictable, but hopefully permanent hiatus as I transition back to
Yes.
full-time work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so LinkedIn is great. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for joining
Yeah.
me. It's been a
Thanks
real
for
pleasure
having
to
me.
speak to you.